Welcome to the OU Insider YouTube channel. This is the 2023 schedule preview series, and today we arrive at Game 11 on the Oklahoma schedule. This features the first road trip in program history to Provo, Utah, to play BYU, one of the newcomers in the Big 12. I'm Parker Thune. That is Jesse Crittenden, here to break down this Oklahoma 2023 schedule one game at a time. And as it pertains to this matchup against the Cougars, Jesse, I think what is most intriguing on paper here is who BYU has playing the quarterback position in Kedon Slovis, a guy that has been around the block a time or two at the P5 level, and also the sheer novelty of it all, going out west to play a program that you only overlap with for a single year in the Big 12. This is unfamiliar territory, if nothing else, for Oklahoma.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think the where it is on the schedule is really interesting too. I mean, the second to last game of the season in an unfamiliar place. It's obviously down the stretch. It's going to be a really important game for OU. And then I think BYU as a whole, 2020, 2021 were really good years for them. 11 win season, a 10-win season. Then last year took a little bit of a step back, finished 8-5. So I think when we're looking at not only trying to project where the Big 12 could go this season and where the new teams fit in, I think BYU may be one of the more confusing teams to kind of project, and especially losing so many key players last year like Jaron Hall at quarterback and Christopher Brooks at running back. So I think overall it's hard to have a firm grasp of what to fully expect from this game.
Okay, Jesse, well then you just talked about how hard it is. Let me ask you, what do you expect from BYU this season based on the lineup, the 22 that they're going to trot out on offense and defense, and the coaching staff that is in place, the overall vibe of this program as they transition to the Big 12? How competitive do you expect them to be?
I think middle of the pack is a great way to project BYU. I don't think they're going to blow anybody's hats off. I don't think they're going to be at the very bottom of the conference. I think somewhere in the middle is honestly where I expect them to be, despite some of the departures, despite kind of how mediocre last season was. I think they will be good. I think Kedon Slovis is going to be a good addition for them. They had a pretty good offense last season. Provo is a notoriously difficult place to play, not a huge stadium, but a very rowdy, disruptive stadium. So all that being said, Oklahoma should win this game, barring any unforeseen developments. Oklahoma should win this game. But again, I do think it could be interesting just because, again, it's a late November game in an unfamiliar place. And Provo, again, notoriously is a sneakily really tough place to play.
You worry at all about Oklahoma not necessarily being prepared for what they're going to encounter in BYU? And not to insinuate that Brent Venables and his staff and the players in that locker room are going to drop the ball in film study throughout the week, but more so, you get kind of where I'm going with it. You have regular conference opponents that you see every single year. You kind of know what you're in for every time you line up opposite that program across the sideline. But with BYU, there's virtually no familiarity here for anybody on Oklahoma's roster.
Yeah, I don't super worry about that in this case, just because, I think by the time this game comes around, not only are we going to have a pretty good idea of where both of these teams are in terms of the conference, landscape, the national landscape, but again, I actually think that unfamiliarity, I think probably, if anything, works in OU's favor. You don't know what to expect. I think there is going to be an element of playing on your toes, not to mention, again, I think any conference road game is really tough. I think this conference game, again, where it is on the schedule, all that stuff. And I think, if OU is where they want to be, 2 weeks from the end of the regular season, which is firmly in the mix for a Big 12 title game, this game could end up being, one of the most important games on the schedule, and they're going to have to do it in an unfamiliar environment that's really tough. So there's a lot of ways this season could go. I always look at TCU last year. Nobody expected TCU to be where they were. There's surprises that can happen. But I think if you're OU, this is a game you simply got to be ready for.
All right. Given the type of football that BYU likes to play, what do you think Oklahoma needs to accomplish in this game to come out on the winning end?
Yeah, and I think BYU is a little bit of a hard team to project just because they're losing, they're replacing a starting quarterback, they're replacing a starting running back. But that coaching staff has been there, excuse me, for quite a while. So they have some consistency. I think you can expect some things. This BYU offense was really good last year. They scored over 30 points per game. Their problem was defensively. So, I mean, I think this will be ultimately a test, not for OU's offense, but for OU's defense, to play really well in a hostile environment against a conference team that, the crowd is going to be on their side. That typically not only favors obviously the home team, but the home offense more than anything else. So, I mean, I think if you're trying to project several weeks out, what's the most important thing? It's going to be OU's defense trying to stop what should be not an amazing, but a good BYU offense on the road.
You talk about the environment being hostile, Jesse. However, one thing I have heard about Lavelle Edwards Stadium out in Provo, is that they have ice cream diplomacy, free ice cream at the end of the first quarter. So obviously never something I've experienced before, but how hostile is it really when there's free ice cream being passed around?
That tells me I may need to take a trip down to the actual stadium outside the press box at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, no joke, man. Moonlight as typical tailgaters, at least for a few minutes in order to secure some free ice cream. But looking ahead to this game, we do this in every single game that we preview, Jesse, but if you had to spotlight an individual as somebody whose performance is going to be pivotal for Oklahoma, who do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the secondary this game. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty clear, if Keaton Slovis is the starting quarterback, he's kind of a gunslinger. That's how he's always been. Almost 10,000 passing yards for his career, 68 touchdowns, 33 interceptions. So that tells you he throws the ball a lot and is not, and doesn't have a great touchdown to interception ratio. But I think we're going to have to look at the secondary here. I think this is a game that has Billy Bowman or Woody Washington all over it. Now, obviously, we've still got to go through fall camp to see how the rest of that secondary depth and rotation shakes out. But to me, this is a Billy Bowman, Woody Washington game. This is a game that I think the OU defense is really going to need to force a couple of turnovers. I think those turnovers are going to come in the passing game. They're going to come in interceptions. Billy Bowman and Woody Washington have played a lot of football. They're veterans now. This is the type of game where, you really need them to step up.
I agree with you, man. And I think it definitely starts defensively for Oklahoma against a program like BYU. But as I think about what Keaton Slovis brings to the table, he doesn't have cinder block feet by any means, but he's not the most mobile quarterback Oklahoma's going to come across. And so I think about guys like Rondell Bothroyd, Trace Ford, even PJ Adebawore, certainly R. Mason Thomas, guys off the edge. If you can apply some pressure, especially early in the game, and just it prevent Slovis from establishing a rhythm and get him mentally rushed to the point where even if there isn't pressure on every single snap, he feels like he's got a ticking clock to get the ball out. That certainly works in your favor, and it makes the secondary's job easier. Heck, it makes everybody's job easier. So I think pressure up front defensively is where it starts for Oklahoma against this BYU program. Again, second to last game on the slate for Oklahoma, final road game of the Big 12 schedule in 2023, the final road game that Oklahoma will ever play in the Big 12. Jesse, lock your pick in. You taking OU or BYU?
I'm taking Oklahoma easily.
As am I. Well, we got one game left to preview. We'll be back next week to do just that. It's the TCU Horned Frogs on Black Friday at 11 a.m. back in Norman. The defending runner-ups in all of the land in college football, TCU. Understandably, expectations are not as high in 2023 as you might expect for a program that is coming off a run to the college football playoff, but nonetheless, not a program to take lightly by any means. We'll dive into how the Sooners stack up against the Horned Frogs coming up in the final video of this preseason series. For Jesse Crittenden, I'm Parker Thune. We'll see you again soon.